I have no idea how to start this video. I've tried to come up with a really good introduction or a nice way to start this and segue into the video, but I have no idea. This is my first attempt at doing anything like this, so I'm just gonna kick on from here. The reason for this video is to just talk about running shoes and how confusing and complicating it can be trying to buy them. What I've found is that when you are brand new to running, which a lot of yous are going to be, running is getting more and more popular every year. If you take into account the London Marathon, for example, 1.1 million people have already signed up to be in the ballot for that. It's insane. That's how popular it is getting, and it's only growing every single year. So I can imagine a lot more people are gonna wanna buy running shoes. A mate of mine at work came up to me the other day and said, "Sam, you like running and love talking about it and annoy us with it and essentially force it down our throats every day. I'm thinking about buying a pair of running shoes. Can you help me?" And after I got really excited, because I'm a loser, I then proceeded to unload on him loads of information about running shoes. And afterwards he said, "Oh wow, thank you. I'm even more confused than before we had the conversation." So I thought I'd try an attempt at making a video where I break down one of the more confusing sort of lineups or section of a running shoe brand, the Asics Blast lineup, which I have here, or I have some of the shoes here. Another important thing to highlight here is that I only actually own 3 of the current Blast lineup, that being the Novablast, the Superblast, and the Megablast. I don't own the Dynablast, which is at the bottom of the Blast lineup. It came out at the same time as the Novablast, and I also don't own the Sonic Blast, but I can talk about them briefly here. Because again, I'm a nerd and I look into these things. However, I'm not going to imply that I know everything about them because I've never used them, and I'm a firm believer that you can't talk about something confidently until you try it yourself. So yeah, giving you an idea of what this kind of video is about, I'm going to be spending my time on those 3 shoes there. Now, the reason I'm okay with that, or I feel like that's an okay thing to do, is because those 3 shoes are probably the ones that you're going to hear a lot about, and you're going to hear people talking about them the most. The Dynablast, I've not heard a lot of people talk about it. As far as I can tell, it seems to be an alright shoe. It's £115, so it's a drop below the rest as far as the price is concerned, and it seems to be just that it's your sort of general, everyday, daily trainer that is okay. You're basically getting what you pay for, £115, which by the way isn't cheap, but in today's market, unfortunately, it is actually on the cheaper end of things. So that's what the Dynablast is. I've never tried it myself, but yeah, as far as I can tell, that's what it is. The Sonic Blast, however, is a brand new shoe that came out at the same time as the Megablast, which we'll talk about later on in the video. And from what I've heard, it's essentially a Novablast with a plate in it. I don't know why you'd want that. I don't want that. Hence why I don't have it. But, you know, I've heard mixed things. Some people say it's alright. Some people say it's not particularly great. I feel like I'd fall in the latter if I were ever to try it. So the first shoe that we're going to have a look at is the Novablast 5, which is this shoe right here. Now, by the way, during this video, if you ever see me kind of glancing down quickly, I have a laptop down here showing me what's happening on the screen. I do apologize if I do that. I'm just trying to keep myself, you know, in the center here, making sure that you can actually see this shoe. So that's what's going on. It'll probably be a little bit annoying. I'll try not to do it in the future, but I am finding myself doing it quite a lot. So that's what's going on. But yeah, the Novablast 5. Now, what the Novablast 5 is essentially a daily trainer that's apparently quite responsive, somewhat versatile, comfortable, that you can do a bit of everything. And yeah, it's kind of that. Now, what I mean by that is, I was actually a fan of this shoe here, this is the Novablast 4, the one that came out the year prior. Fairly versatile, comfortable running shoe or daily trainer where you can do essentially a bit of everything. The 5, however, this one here, I don't really feel like it does. Now, from the outside looking in, you're probably thinking, Sam, they look fairly similar. I assume that they work the same way. And I understand why you might think that. And if you look online and watch reviews, a lot of the time, that's what they're saying too. However, I have to disagree. What they've done with this shoe is they've stuck a brand new foam in it, the FF Blast Max foam, okay? And that's where I disagree. Now, everything else about the shoe is fairly similar to the 4. The stack height is about 40mm or a little bit more. The drop from heel to toe, is an 8mm drop, which is actually the case for all of these shoes. Asics loves an 8mm drop, so it's quite a nice drop. It's nice to your calves. Yeah, it's an 8mm drop, bringing it down to 32mm, and it's quite a wide base, as you can see on the bottom, making it fairly comfortable. But again, the problem I have with it is that new foam that they've changed it out. Before, and this is where things get confusing because I'm about to throw loads of foam names out there. But before, they had a foam called the FF Blast Plus Eco, which was essentially a firm foam, but quite a responsive one. But it was also comfortable. I did all kinds of runs in this, anywhere between long runs to shorter interval efforts, which I wouldn't recommend a shoe for this, but I did them and it was fine, to sort of more longer tempo runs at like whatever you would consider your marathon or even half marathon pace. Now again, I definitely think there's better shoes for that, 2 of which I'm going to talk about later in the video, but it did it fine, and it did it at a price that was actually pretty reasonable. Both these shoes cost £135, and you can often get them for a little bit cheaper than that in sales, which I'd highly recommend doing. But the problem I have is that this shoe here, the 5 with that new foam, just isn't hitting the same for me. It's nowhere near as responsive. It's a good bit softer, so I think a lot of people like that. We are kind of in the age of running shoes that softer automatically just means better now. I have to disagree. I'm not on board with that, but hey, it looks good in an Instagram video. But it is a lot softer, and it is probably a bit, if I'm being honest, more comfortable at those slower paces. Where it's let down though is that when you try to speed up in it, you just end up sinking into the foam and you're not really getting much from it. What I would sort of compare this to is more like a 1080 from New Balance, that lineup. If you've ever liked that shoe, it's quite soft. It's not the most versatile shoe in the world, but it's comfortable and it does that job. And I feel like the Novablast is definitely like that now, more than the 4 that was before. That foam there, I just think it's a lot better. And by the looks of it, Asics are drifting more towards that FF Blast Max foam than the Plus Eco that's in this. And I think that that's a shame, because I actually think it's not as good, which is controversial apparently, because everybody seems to love the Novablast 5. The other thing that I don't like about it is the durability, or lack thereof. This shoe here, I did about 600 kilometers in this shoe, and it actually got to the point where I just stopped using it because I got bored of the shoe. It was almost too durable, which is what you want, especially when you're spending way over £100 on a running shoe. You want it to be durable. And I've heard people say that after about 100 miles in this shoe, it's done. And I think that that's a disgrace. That's horrible, especially when compared to the previous shoe where you could do hundreds and hundreds of miles and it still felt basically how it felt out the box. I've only actually done about 120 kilometers in this, and to be honest, it's nothing to do with the durability. I still think that it feels good after that amount of time. I just don't find myself gravitating towards the shoe. I just think I've got better shoes that do a very similar job, but they're just offering a bit more at it. If I'm ever on a run, for example, and I want to throw in like some faster reps, or I want to end with some strides, I don't want to do it in this shoe. It really is a shoe that I would only take out if I want to do a slow run for like an hour that's all sort of easy pace, and at that point I feel like there's other shoes that do that job even better than the Novablast. So yeah, that's my opinion on the Novablast. I think that there's a lot of people out there that will enjoy it. I still recommend it to people who are brand new to running, purely down to the fact that it's not too expensive and it's fairly comfortable. And I have heard people, friends of mine even, who have bought a pair of these and they've said that they're really good. But for me personally, I'm just not a fan. I feel like if you can get this shoe, it is becoming harder and harder to find, but if you can get the 4 on offer, then do that. It's a far better offering. But it's not all bad, to be honest. There are a few things that I do like about it. Again, it is comfortable. It's really comfortable. I'd actually think that it's even more comfortable than the 4. And that mostly comes down to the upper that's on it here. I think the upper is definitely the thing that Asics do better than almost any other brand. They're really good at just offering you enough and not feeling the need to offer you too much, if you know what I mean. Like, they've got enough padding at the back here at the heel. The tongue is fairly thin, and that's the case for the majority of their shoes, but they've got this sort of design where they put like 2 strips at the top, and to be honest with you, that's enough. The rest of it is fairly stripped back, and because of that, it's really, really comfortable. There's no real hot spots in the shoe, but it also ends up being quite lightweight. I think this shoe comes in at about 250 grams in my size 8 that I've got here. So yeah, it's not all bad. It's just that I feel like the previous one and some other shoes just offer a bit more for a similar price point, if not a little bit less. I mean, you've got shoes like the Evo SL now from Adidas that you've probably seen a lot of. I think that that's a slightly different kind of shoe though, I will say that. This one, for example, definitely does slow, easy runs significantly better than the Evo SL. But you are getting a lot more from shoes like that, and brands seem to be offering a lot more for this kind of price range, making it harder and harder to recommend this shoe. I mean, if you even take into account Puma, they've got shoes that are £110, £130 with the Magnify Nitro and the Velocity Nitro, and they're putting like aliphatic TPU foams in there now, which are highly responsive foams that they put in their race shoes, PIBA based foams that also are in their race shoes. So it's really, really tough to recommend a shoe like this, whereas I feel like the foam in this just isn't all that. Now, the next shoe that we're going to be talking about is this one here, the Superblast 2. Now, you might be thinking that, wow, that looks fairly similar to the Novablast that you were just talking about, especially Novablast 4, because it's clear that they've basically taken the geometry of that shoe and came out with this one here. They tend to do that with the Superblast, by the way. They look fairly similar. That's why they're kind of within that Blast lineup. But yeah, this is the Superblast 2. Although it looks similar, there obviously are some big differences. The main one being the foam in it, which is FF Turbo Plus now, which is the foam that they used in their current race lineup, or one of the foams that they're using in their current race lineup, the Metaspeeds Sky and Edge Tokyos, and it's the main foam that they used in the previous lineup, the Paris. It was the only foam that they used there. And because of that, you've got a shoe that is a lot more versatile than the Novablast. You've got 45 millimeters of stack now, which is, well, at the time of release was a ridiculously high stack, but these days it's considered pretty normal to have a stack height that high, which is insane. But you've got shoes like the Nike Vomero Premium that's coming in at like a 55mm. You've got other shoes like the Prime X from Adidas also coming in at like a 50mm of stack. So we've only got 45 in this one. Sorry guys, but there's a 45mm stack, and again it's an 8mm drop because Asics love an 8mm drop. You've got a wide base at the bottom, and you've also got another layer of foam, a smaller one, being that FF Blast Plus Eco that was in the 4 that we spoke about before. I'll be honest, I don't know if this video is making things more confusing or less confusing for you, but bear with me. Yeah, the shoe ends up being pretty good though because of that. With that FF Turbo Plus foam being the main sort of driver, if you will, of this sort of shoe, it makes it a really sort of responsive and less sort of sinky shoe, if that makes sense. It can be sort of, I don't know if I describe it as aggressive, but you're definitely getting more pop from the shoe as you're using it. It's also a lot firmer than the Novablast, which might be a put-off for a lot of people, particularly when it comes to those slower paces. A sort of negative trait that this shoe apparently has for a lot of people is that at those slower paces it can feel somewhat blocky. I think that can come down to 3 things: the size of the shoe, the stiffness of the foam, and also there's sidewalls of foam in this shoe that not a lot of people tend to talk about when they're reviewing the shoe, but they're definitely there and they're noticeable. Now, the good thing about that is the shoe actually ends up being really stable because it's quite firm and you've got those sidewalls of foam. The bad thing about it is it can feel somewhat blocky and feel like you've just got a lot of shoe on your foot. I've heard people describe it as almost like running with bolts on their feet, and I can see where they're coming from. But I also think that it all depends on what kind of runner you are. For me personally, I land on more the forefoot of the shoe. My heel actually doesn't touch the floor at all, which my calves absolutely love. But because of that, I don't really feel that blockiness at the back of the shoe, even at those slower paces. However, I can imagine if you're landing slightly further back in the shoe and you're feeling more of the shoe and you're kind of rolling through your stride, then you probably can feel a lot of the shoe. And when you're running slower, I can see why that would be a problem. For me personally though, it's not a problem. And because of that, I love this shoe. I've done everything in this shoe. Actually, the way I described the 4 when I was talking about the Novablast 4, this one here, is kind of how I would describe this shoe, but significantly better. I can take this shoe obviously in slow, easy runs. It's not the best at that because it's quite firm, but it does the job well enough for me. I can take it for long runs where I'm throwing in sort of more of those marathon efforts for a few reps. Amazing for that. I can take it for longer threshold runs as long as I'm not going too fast, because again, there's a lot of shoe here. And that's essentially what I've been doing with it. The best way I would describe the shoe is it's a shoe that hits a sweet spot. And if you hit that sweet spot, it's the best at doing that. And that sweet spot is about marathon to half marathon pace. And it'll hold that pace and it'll feel comfortable doing it. The other thing that I noticed with this shoe is I can take it out for a long run where my legs feel heavy, I don't feel particularly great that day, but afterwards I feel completely fine. Whereas when I try and do a similar type of run in a different kind of shoe, I can definitely feel it in the legs afterwards. So yeah, it's a really, really good shoe for that. The only thing is that in order to get that experience, you're gonna have to drop about £200. I have seen it on deals, but very occasionally. It seems to me that Asics are selling so many of these that they don't feel the need to put them on sale. So when you compare them to other shoes that are fairly similar, they'll be on sale all the time, whereas I've only seen this on sale like once or twice. Occasionally you can get lucky and find some sort of discount code and it'll work with that. I know one of my mates at work managed to do that and got it for something like £120, which is insane. But for the most part, you're probably going to have to drop about £200 until they release a new one, which is coming out next year. And I feel like it's a tough sell at that amount of money, especially for most people. Like, the reason I bought this shoe is because I'm a nerd and I like tech and I'm willing to spend a ridiculous amount of money on stuff that I don't even necessarily need. And I don't need this shoe. Like, I've got a good enough shoe lineup without it where I'd be fine, but I wanted it, so I spent the money. For most people, it's gonna be hard for me to recommend it. It's £200, it's ridiculous. And I also don't think that it's necessarily worth £200 either. As much as I love the shoe, and I do love it, £200 is just a hard sale. I think that what you're getting here is essentially about £170 worth of shoe. You know, it's got a really good foam in it with that FF Turbo Plus. It's got really good sort of geometry, again, like a comfortable sort of wide base that's really, really stable. And then the upper, again, similar to the 5, I mentioned this before, Asics have the best uppers that you can get, in my opinion. It's really, really comfortable. You're not getting any hot spots. So it's kind of a shoe that you can just grab, go for a run, and you'll be completely fine in. I guess the argument would be that if you get a shoe like this, you don't really need a shoe running lineup for the majority of people. So say you're covering about 30 to 40 kilometers a week and that's it. You could probably get away with a shoe like this, so it doesn't require you to buy any others. I mean, I know people that like to race in this shoe. Personally, I wouldn't do it. I just think it's too much shoe. But I've heard people that like to race in it. So I guess you could do that. But other than that, I feel a bit weird recommending it to people. But I do love it, and I consistently love it. It's not the bounciest shoe in the world. There's other shoes that do that job a little bit better. One of them I'm about to talk about. That FF Turbo Plus foam isn't that. It's responsive, but it's definitely not bouncy. It's not like a Zoom X or what Adidas have with their Light Strike Pro foam and other sort of Hokas as well. They've got more bouncy sink-in foams that you kind of come in, compress, and then bounce back. That's not what you get with this. It's more like a direct, you hit the ground and immediately keep going. That's why I like it. I don't like a super soft foam. I just feel like you lose out too much on stability for what you gain in performance. Whereas this, I feel like you get enough performance, but you also get to keep that level of stability. So I do find myself gravitating towards it. But then you have to ask yourself, are you willing to pay £200 to get that? And the majority of yous, I would probably say, no, you shouldn't. Which is a shame, because it's a really, really great shoe. But if you want it, that's a Superblast 2. Alright, well, if £200 wasn't enough for you to spend, how about spending £210? That's right. We're going to be talking about this, the Megablast. And essentially what the Megablast is the Superblast again, but not really. The reason I'm saying that is because a lot of people, when you're looking in from the outside again, will probably see another 45mm stacked shoe with an 8mm drop, with a wide base that's really, really lightweight, regardless of its size, and think, well, it's just kind of the same shoe again. And it is fairly similar in some regard, but it's also very different in others, and that's what I want to explain. There's a few things that are different here. One, the upper. Now, I don't know how Asics have pulled this off, but this is a really stripped back upper. The back of the shoe has even less padding than it did before, but it's still very comfortable. The tongue is the thinnest I've ever seen for a daily trainer, yet I don't get any hot spots on it. The front of the shoe is basically non-existent. Whatever socks you're wearing is coming straight through the front of the shoe. And they've added these new laces, which are essentially the race laces, the rigid ones. They should put these on every running shoe, and that goes for every brand. I don't care if it's a daily trainer, I don't care if it's an easy trainer, just put the race laces on, we'll all be happy. I don't know why we only put these on the race shoes, and I don't know why they think that bigger, thicker laces is more premium or better for an easy day running shoe. It's just more weight and more annoying. These are great. So that's a big thing that you get on this, the new upper. The other new thing is there's a new foam again. This foam is called FF Turbo Squared. It's the only foam in this one, so unlike the Superblast that's like a dual setup with the FF Turbo Plus and the FF Plus Eco or FF Blast Plus Eco, even I'm getting confused now. This one here is just FF Turbo Squared, which is a new foam that they've put in it, and I believe it's an aliphatic TPU foam, fairly similar to some of the new race foams that are in new shoes that are coming out now from Puma, and also Asics' own lineup that has that FF Leap foam in it. It is confusing, I understand. I don't think my video is helping anybody, but again, try and bear with me here. So FF Turbo Squared foam in here. The other thing that's different is you're not getting those sidewalls of foam, and I think that's a big thing that you're missing here. As lightweight as this shoe is, by the way, this one's coming in at about 224 grams in my size 8, which is insane for a shoe like this, and you feel it, like it feels light. It's insane. But you are missing out on some key elements that I felt like you had in the Superblast 2, but because of that, you're also gaining some elements, and I'm going to try my best to explain them. So, what are the key differences between this shoe and that Superblast 2 that we were talking about? Well, the big one is that foam. The foam is a slightly different feel now. It feels less dense, it feels a lot less sort of firm or harsh underneath your foot. You get a little bit more sinking with this one, and I do think it's a good bit more bouncy. It's not the bounciest foam out there. I definitely think other brands have bouncier foams, but it's definitely the bounciest foam that I've ever used from Asics. I haven't tried the FF Leap foam, for example, that are in our new race shoes, so I can't comment on them, but every other foam that I've tried from Asics, they're nowhere near as bouncy as this one. And because of that, it ends up being quite fun. I wouldn't really describe the other shoes as the most fun shoes. The Superblast 2 is relatively fun, like it's a responsive shoe, but this one here I just like putting on and going for any kind of run and enjoying it. And that's essentially what you're getting here. The other thing that I find with a shoe, because you don't have those sidewalls of foam, it is a little bit less stable, but it also feels like a little less shoe because of it. I've heard people say that this shoe's a lot better for slow runs when compared to the Superblast 2, and I definitely can see that, but again, I think it depends on what kind of runner you are and what kind of paces you're doing those slow runs at. Now, without those sidewalls of foam, you might find that the shoe feels a little bit easier or nicer at those sort of slower paces, because it doesn't feel like you've got two bolts on your feet like we were talking about before with the Superblast. The other thing is that it definitely feels like there's a little bit less shoe there. Even though it's still a 45mm stacked shoe, they've shaved some of the back end of the shoe, if you can see that. Hang on, there you go. When compared to the Superblast 2, there's a bit more there. The other thing is that foam definitely feels like it's offering you a little bit more at all kinds of paces. Remember how I said that the Superblast 2 is definitely what I would refer to as a sweet spot shoe, and when you're running at those specific paces, like your marathon pace all the way up to half marathon pace, it really works for you. But when you go a bit faster than that, it feels a bit clunky. Same with if you go slower than that, it can also feel somewhat clunky because there's a lot of shoe there and you can feel those sidewalls of foam. So although it's stable, it just feels like it's hard to get yourself going in it. This shoe does away with all of that, and it's simply come down to the type of foam and getting rid of those sidewalls of foam as well. I definitely find that when I'm running slower in it, I can kind of tick over a lot more comfortable. It's a lot more forgiving, a lot less blocky, and I can also go faster in this shoe as well. I did a run at the weekend where I did essentially an easy paced run where I only really went easy to steady pace for the majority of it, and then just for 2 of the reps I decided to go at my half marathon pace, but ended up picking the pace up all the way up to my 5k pace just because I was having so much fun in this shoe. That's not what I would like to do in this shoe here, the Superblast 2. I just always felt like there was too much shoe going on whenever I tried to go at those kinds of paces, so I never really tended to do it. Whereas this shoe here, I feel like you can do that. The only thing I would say though is that when you lose those sort of sidewalls of foam and you soften up the foam like they have done here, or well, I mean it's a completely different foam, but it's definitely a different feel, you do lose out on that kind of magic sweet spot that you had with this shoe here. Like, I definitely think that it's underrated. And although the Megablast is brand new and everybody's really excited about it right now, I do find that a lot of people after a while are gonna gravitate towards, or maybe come back to, this shoe here, especially as marathon season is going to start to pick up soon with the spring marathons coming in. A lot of people are going to be doing winter training. This is definitely going to be my long run shoe of choice over this shoe here. Alright, to summarize, I have no idea if this video has even been a little bit helpful. Probably not. I've probably gone off on too many tangents like I thought I would. I'm going to try and edit this down the best I can. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to edit out of it, but I hope it's been somewhat helpful. Essentially what I'm trying to get at is that Asics have a really confusing running shoe lineup. I've barely scratched the surface. I just focused in on their Blast lineup and only 3 of their shoes. And I ended up talking about them loads to try and explain the key differences that I've personally found as somebody who's used these 3 shoes a lot. Thank you very much for watching if you made it this far. I know I've rambled and rambled on about these shoes. I'll try and cut it down the best I can, and I hope the video has been alright for you. I might make more of these. This might be the only YouTube video that I ever make. You can tell that I'm brand new to this. I'm stumbling my way through it. I'm trying to figure out the best way to put this together. I'm also trying to be concise with it. I don't know how well that's going. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and if I ever upload again, feel free to watch some more. Thank you.